Huh? We should be in and out of here. We should be through this warrant and on with our lives, right?
How was your trip?
Which one?
The second one. I think I was here.
Did I see you before I went to?
Okay, welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting of October 15th, 2019. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I leave this weekend for Nazareth.
Okay, citizen statements and petitions. Approval of meeting minutes from October 1st.
I move to approve meeting minutes of October 1st, 2019 as written.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Correspondence to the board. Consider National Grid easement.
Good evening, gentlemen.
How are you?
So hopefully you have an easement document from National Grid. This is, we've already signed one before for work done on that telephone pole. This one is for this pole in front of the parking lot. It's going to get moved 16 feet north, 18 feet, something like that north, to get it out of the way. They just need the approval, for you to sign to allow them to do the work.
This parking lot here, not the one across the street.
The one right in the middle of the parking lot that we want to get out of the middle of the parking lot, it's going to be moving, I think 16, 18 feet this way. So we need that signed by you and notarized, hopefully, town clerk can notarize it tomorrow, and then if you could get it in the mail it just has to go to Hopedale, but we just want to get that done so we can move forward with that work. My understanding is there also needs to be a poll hearing after this is signed, so after they receive it, I believe they're going to ask you to, I don't know if that's typical when you move a pole or installing it? Yeah. Okay, so we'll need you to post maybe at your next meeting, just a hearing and invite, I guess, abutters or whatever, and just say, hey, the pole is moving, and
They'll do all the legwork and do the abutter notification.
Yes.
And we'll
But but it has to be at one of your meetings.
Absolutely.
Right.
So that should take care of that. And then, any questions on that?
No, I can't.
Okay, I don't know, do you need a motion, or do you?
We do have one.
Let's see, I move to sign the National Grid grant of easement for the new police station, for the new pole location.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just, since I'm here, I figured just give you a quick update on the project. So for people that haven't really seen the building, so the foundation and the concrete masonry for the detention area and the sally port, everything is done. The wood framing for the addition is complete. And they're now finishing the interior framing and partitioning. Hopefully that's done in the next couple of weeks. The roofs, the siding, the windows, door installations, hopefully will all be done in the next couple of weeks. They want to get the building weather tight before the winter. So it'll look soon like a real building, hopefully. Last time I was here, you mentioned parking. We're still not sure of what it's going to look like. They need to open up that fencing anyway for snow, so we're still trying to figure out what's going to be available, between the cistern and the current police station. If you do notice, that old shallow fire well is gone. So that was taken out and filled in last week, so that's good. From a schedule standpoint, we're still on schedule for end of March. There is a possibility of the paving not happening this winter and pushing it to the spring. That may bleed into April, so we'll just keep you informed on that. But definitely by March, potentially April, for the project closeout. Budget standpoint, as a reminder, we had the $5 million, the $880, and then we had $50,000 from the state. We did get an unforeseen condition with the cistern. We need to remove 470 cubic yards of ledge, which cost us $113,750. We do have contingency. So after that, our contingency is around $165K. But we still have some security systems and some furniture stuff that we need to try to cover with that. So we're okay from a budget standpoint, but we're 6 more months. Hopefully no more unforeseen conditions arise. Just so you know, the security system went out to bid, so Laura, you will be receiving 5 or 6 bids for the security system. The deadline is October 30th. They'll come to the Board of Selectmen's office, attention to Mary Busso, our OPM. She'll come and open them and handle all that, but they will be mailed here. The last thing is the alternates. We had the $520,000 that was approved in May for the 3 alternates. We awarded the alternate for the second floor build out to the general contractor. That was about $348,000. So there's still $170,000 for the other 2 alternates. The general contractor did not bid on those. So at the end of the project, the building will be complete, but we will own the demo of the police station and the final top coat for the parking lot. So whatever monies are left over at the end of the project, we'll turn them back to the town, and hopefully Kim or someone else will have to manage that.
I love how he's like looking at me, like, is this gonna be all right? It's fine.
Well, I mean, the
$170,000.
GC will be off the project. What I mean is they'll all be done. It really needs to fall into some other purview, that's all.
I have a question about why you chose alternate 4 for the fit out.
Why did we do the upstairs? That's the only one that they bid on.
Okay.
The question was, do we want them to do it now as part of the project? I mean, we could have done it for a lot less money if we left a lot of it for BVT, but it would have also delayed it potentially a year or more, because BVT couldn't have started until next fall, and then with their scheduling would probably have taken another year. Do we not occupy, I mean, do we leave this police station until another year and a half? So we went kind of back and forth. Chief, I don't...
The committee ultimately decided that, we took a vote, it's the best just to finish it, because right now, all the subs are there, so we're not going to have to find a sub that matches up with the heating, the HVAC, with the electrical, with the sprinkler, because they're all particular. So now we're going to have to get someone to match up with someone else's work. We think we're going to save money, that could cost us more. And at the same time, the goal, what really the committee decided along with myself, is we need a complete building. I mean, to piecemeal that, it's what we did originally with a highway barn. We piecemealed it, so there was no sense of piecemealing the second floor. Just have a complete building, get in, tear the other one down, and then we can start working on the campus instead of another year and a half, with volunteers and trying to make it work. Just best avenue to go with.
Do you have a concern with that, or?
No, I just am surprised of the options, since that was the one that was sort of floated as the one that was, of the 4, was potentially the one that could wait and not be the one that's done, and it's the one that was ultimately awarded. Whatever the reasoning is fine, I just am surprised that that's the one of all of the ones.
Yeah, that would have held up the detention, the
Timing.
weapons cleaning and the evidence and stuff,
We're going to
and
be able to use the Sally Port for a year and a half.
Right.
There's a building there, we couldn't use it, so.
Do we have, what were the estimates for the demo, or like a rough estimate of?
so
what that might
we don't have an actual, from when we got the original, the bids back in, last fall, the demo of the police, I don't want to put someone on the spot, but we have someone in the audience who's willing to support that work. So we actually have ideas of how to cover that with minimal cost to the town. How's that?
They did give us estimates on the other 2 alternates, but they really didn't want to do them, and the prices they gave us was the I don't want to do them prices. That
But in the
if we pay
beginning
them
of-
enough, they do it, but they were ridiculous prices.
Right, but for, when we brought the 520 to town meeting? What were the rough ideas of what those?
Exactly. So back then, unfortunately, I don't have that with me, but if I go off memory, this is higher than what the original fit-up was.
250 off
Yeah,
the
it
top
was-
of my head.
But if you actually look at the dollars and
Right, and that was for rough build-out. That
Correct.
wasn't for completed. Second, that was a rough build, so this doesn't seem that far off.
I want to say the demo was 150, but they were assuming it needed to be abated, and there was a lot of other work. We've already had it abated, so those were high artificially. And then the parking lot ranged anywhere from like 60 to 120 or something like that. The final top. And right now, there's discussion about pushing that till the spring anyway, all the paving, so maybe it's something we can work on there to do it all once. So we need to work that between now and spring, essentially. But we should be able to do it with the, hopefully, barring any unforeseen conditions, the contingency can cover that. We still have the money from the spring to cover those two alternates.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Consider request St. Gabriel's Church to place signs.
So a letter from Pat Kelly for St. Gabriel's Christmas Fair. They want to post one on Millville Road and 16, Main Street and 16, North Ave and Northbridge. Fair will be held on Saturday, December 7th, 2019. And they'll be placed 3 weeks prior and removed on December 8th.
Sounds good.
I move to authorize St. Gabriel's Church to place signs advertising St. Gabriel's Christmas Fair at Millville Road and 16, Main Street and 16, North Ave and Northbridge.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, discuss mosquito program. Come on up.
They won't. Hi there. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The gentleman that's with us is Mr. Tim Deschamps. He's with the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project. Last meeting, we were here, and you guys had some questions, and this gentleman is here to hopefully answer any issues you have.
Great. Do you want to just give a maybe brief overview of the program? I know we did this a few years ago, but maybe refresh our memories and if there's any differences between then and now.
Okay, absolutely. My name is Tim Deschamps, the Executive Director of the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project. We're a state agency that currently operates in 42 communities in both Worcester and Middlesex counties. We do work in several communities around Mendon. We work in Blackstone, Millville, Milford, Hopedale, and some in town of Northbridge as well. We do provide a full program of mosquito control, which is a year-round program. The first part of the program is larval control. Our technicians are trained to identify mosquito larvae in area wetlands, and when they identify these larvae, they do applications of a species-specific bacteria right in the water at the time to prevent emergence from that wetland area. We have an adult mosquito control program, which consists of truck-mounted sprayers, which can respond to citizens' requests or local officials for public gatherings, etc. Again, this is a request-only part of the program, so if any town that is scheduled on any given evening and there are no requests to be sprayed, there's no spraying that is done. We have a ditch maintenance program. We have a wetland scientist on staff. She's a former conservation agent. She will go out and look at areas that had historic flow patterns and try to determine if work could be done there to restore those areas. Mosquito larvae need stagnant water in order to develop, so if we can restore the flow patterns, we can reduce mosquito larvae from that area. And all that work is done upon receipt of permission from the property owners. We have a mosquito surveillance program where we set out traps in different parts of each of our towns to collect mosquitoes. This gives us information on population densities and certain species of concern for virus transmission are then sent into the Jamaica Plain lab of the Mass Department of Public Health on a weekly basis. We have a public educational program where through the school systems, generally K through 5, our entomologists will go out and do an educational program to the students, teach them about mosquito biology. We also have a program geared towards senior citizens who are an at-risk population for West Nile virus. We do a lot of those programs through our senior centers and councils on aging. We have research and efficacy department with a biologist on staff to test our products and procedures to make sure they're currently working as expected and also try out new areas that have shown potential for mosquito control. Two fairly new programs that the town of Mendon may not have been made aware of a few years back. We have a source reduction program. This consists of recycling tires, reducing a source of mosquito larval habitat. We do curbside pickup. We coordinate with communities for hazardous waste cleanups, large tire pile cleanups, etc. It's become a very successful program for us. This year we did surpass 30,000 tires that have been recycled. And all these tires are brought up to a facility in the town of Littleton where they're ground up and used in road products. Then finally, we do have a beaver mitigation program where our wetland scientists will determine if beavers are causing a problem, and if so, we can install flow devices. This is done according to the state regs with boards of health and conservation commission input as well.
Great. Are you, remind me, is the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project, is it a part of a broader state agency?
Yes, we fall directly under Mass Department of Agriculture, and we're overseen by the State Reclamation Board that has 3 members, one from Department of Environmental Protection, one from Department of Agriculture, and one from Conservation and Recreation. And we do coordinate very closely with Mass Department of Public Health as well.
What's the cost of this again, sir?
It would be approximately $53,000 annually, which would be an assessment that would come off the local aid package.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
You mentioned the truck-mounted sprayers. You don't do aerial spraying, correct?
We do not. The aerial spraying that was done was coordinated through the State Department of Public Health and Mass Agriculture. We did some coordination with them, but that type of application is done at levels far above myself.
What percentage would you say the spraying is as far as your whole program with all the things that you've described?
I'd say on a public, the way the public sees us, it would be in many people's minds 100%. However, all those other programs I described are proactive programs that are done year-round. The spraying program does tend to be fairly heavy in some areas up north, the northern part of our district in Wilmington and Tewksbury. There's a lot of very large wetlands that are difficult to get these larval applications done there. So spraying can be, a fairly popular program up in those areas, whereas towns like Milford and Hopedale, it doesn't tend to be quite as popular. There are still some pocketed wetlands in these areas as well, but as most of us are aware, there's a lot of ledge and a lot of exposed rock, which don't allow for much wetland habitat.
With the towns that you have on your schedule, have you seen much success? I mean, we're seeing the maps that shows critical state. We're in critical. The towns that you're involved with that are in critical state, how effective is your program?
Well, it depends on a lot of environmental factors, of course. The towns that we work in that turned either high or critical, we had early indications through our surveillance program that there was trouble, and, through coordination with our local boards of health, the spray program had been implemented, in many cases town-wide, again, at the request of the town itself. So, we did not anticipate aerial spraying. It had never been done in this area before. Once the state decided it was going to happen, of course, we coordinated with them just to more or less stay out of their way and try to determine how best to augment and supplant any of the work that they were doing. But, a lot of the work that was done was prior to the identification of Tripoli virus. As you would expect, the next few months going into next year, there's going to be a lot of meetings amongst all the districts. We have one scheduled already in 2 weeks where we're going to be working with our local and state officials to be much more aggressive on the larval control aspect. The two species that are mostly involved with Tripoli transmission, one that transmits it among the bird populations. Birds are the ones that carry the Tripoli virus up from the southern latitudes. That species and another species that'll transmit it to people have very cryptic larval habitats. They make it very difficult to apply our bacteria products in their habitats. So there has been some field trials ongoing on different formulations, some wet formulations, and there's another bacteria that we field trialed as well that we're hoping we're going to show more success in trying to get those two species much better under control and hopefully reduce a lot of the risk from the Tripoli transmission. Most mosquito larvae freely float. They're easily found, easily treated. The one that transmits among the bird populations tend to live under the root systems of cedar and red maple swamps, so therefore, getting the bacteria into those areas is very difficult. And the other species that transmits it from the birds directly to the people, their larvae attach to the roots of cattails and breathe through the cattail plant themselves. So again, they don't freely float. They like to live in that muck and that area that is not nearly as waterborne, if you will, as others are. But again, we've done field trials of different bacterial products and different formulations of those products, and we're really hoping to get a more aggressive approach next year. Larger areas done with aircraft and et cetera.
The bacterial stuff that you use, is it detrimental to any aquatic life?
The primary bacteria we use is called Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's a variety of that called israelensis, which is very specific to mosquito larvae, black fly larvae, which develop in flowing water, so unfortunately we don't have any impacts on them. And there are a few species of midge that are susceptible to BTI as well. The other bacteria we're looking at is called spinosad, that does have a wider range of control for insects, so that is one we're going to have to be much more selective in areas that we choose to treat in. We will, of course, as we always do, check our natural heritage atlases and make sure that any applications are to be done in those areas that we have prior approval from the Endangered Species Program.
How long is this, have you guys been doing this?
We were formed in 1974 with about 30 communities at that time, and it was in response to some Tripoli concerns in the Metro West area. I don't believe it was called Metro West at the time, but those communities did get together and form. And then in the early 2000s, when West Nile virus came, we saw a fairly large increase in membership. So we're currently at 42 communities.
And how long has Tripoli been an issue?
Tripoli has probably been around for hundreds of years. It was first identified in 1939 after the hurricane came through, and I believe there were 30-some odd cases at that time. And it has shown sporadically throughout the years. Historically, it was more common in the southeastern part of Massachusetts, again, where the Great Atlantic Cedar swamps are. Unfortunately, it has started to show up in areas like southern New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts, and now, of course, Metro West and even areas out in the Pioneer Valley. A lot of the theory is that as these red cedar swamps become more mature, as these trees get larger, they form those protected areas where these larvae can develop in, and we're seeing the spread of that species as well.
All right. Sorry.
Question too.
I'm going to assume that the other parts of your program, such as the tire reclamation, help with fever control, the education programs that you put into the public schools, or offer to the public schools, are just as important.
Absolutely, everything ties into each other. Personal protection is the message we push constantly. We don't pretend that coming through with a truck or an airplane is going to completely eliminate mosquitoes and completely eliminate the risk. It will reduce the risk, however, we're all responsible for ourselves and our family to make sure that we follow those personal protection measures, and change our, our outdoor activities if and when possible. But yes, each of our products and procedures, if you take one away, oftentimes there's more emphasis on others, and sometimes, by taking one away, you can reduce the overall effectiveness, sometimes significantly.
I have a question. So you are doing a lot of different types of things. I'm sure this is impossible to know because one mosquito ruins the entire data collection. But is there any correlation between towns who have been in the program longer, let's say, in a reduction in possible cases like, over time, they've shown that they didn't actually hit critical status because the education made a significant difference or anything like that?
It is difficult to say, in this area, what we just experienced is unprecedented, so we don't have a lot of history to draw upon. Tripoli has shown up in this area a few times in the past. Westboro, for example, we have what's literally called Great Cedar Swamp in the middle of town. So it has shown up there on occasion, but, that is a difficult question to answer because you would have to monitor a lot of areas that get no program at all versus the ones that do have a program and, we wouldn't want to put people necessarily at risk.
The question that I brought up last time, I guess, is the same, and kind of what I was getting at with the questions that I was leading up with, is that we can spend this money, and there's still no guarantee, because we have every community that was around us that was also elevated to critical status in this last go-around, that we're all participating in. Blackstone, Millville, every town that touches us, you mentioned, that's participating in it, we're all sprayed, we're all aerial sprayed, and we're all elevated to the critical status. So I'm having a hard time understanding. I totally get the education, right? I get that, right? But if everybody around us also, over the same amount of time that have been spending this money, have been in the same boat as Mendon this whole time, and we're not spending the money, and then we all got elevated to critical status all at the same time. So I'm just not understanding. I'm having a hard time being able to say that, yes, we should spend this when it's being spent around us and nothing changed.
Well, the risk level is something that, Mass Department of Public Health has complete control over. They don't coordinate with us with that at all. However, in the communities that did go high and critical, these communities had available resources to them on an immediate basis from our program. So in other words, when Northborough went critical with a human case, this was on a Friday afternoon, we communicated with our Board of Health. Actually, they called us because they were notified prior, and we actually had staff come in on a Sunday night and spray the town. Now, again, we're not saying this is going to completely eliminate the risk, but at the time, there was no aerial spraying, essentially planned for that area. The best response that we could offer was that response. And, in many of our communities, our surveillance traps are giving us that early warning information that tells us that there is something in the environment. So the communities that don't have trapping done, Mendon was fortunate that Mass Public Health had some staff available to come in and put some traps and subsequently find the virus, but had they not been, had the budget or the personnel available to do that, the community may have been a little bit more unsure as to what was happening. And of course, when Mass Public Health raises the risk, it's often generalized, it's a generalized area. It's because there was a finding in a specific location, and they're not going to just raise that one town or that one location. It does, of course, bleed into, the areas around it.
Okay, so how long has Northborough been doing it with you guys?
It was an original member, so since '74.
Since 74, and how long is it, has the price increased over time?
Yes. Generally, our budget increases from 1% to 3%. It depends upon what gets certified by the State Reclamation Board.
So, again, I'm just, and don't, I'm not trying to put this down or anything, but that long of that amount of money spent over all those years, and the net effect was they got sprayed the night they found out that somebody had a human case. But still, it didn't, there was still a human case, there was still, and again, I please don't take me the wrong way on this. Just having a hard time with having to say this, yes, to spend this kind of money, or to take it off our roll, when the net effect is still the same as what we have here in Mendon, what we have without it. I don't see how there's a huge benefit to this.
I think it would be hard to get a 100% end-all be-all that there would be total eradication of mosquitoes. I understand your point, I get it, but with just such a great area of a whole town, I don't see that any program could possibly be total eradication of mosquitoes, or anything.
Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm not,
I get
I
your
wouldn't
point.
agree. I'm sorry, I would agree 100% on that there is no end-all be-all. I just don't I've said my piece.
I think
I don't wanna
you have
keep
to look
people
at
simple.
it as, and I don't know how you would identify it, but how many lives could have possibly been saved in the communities that were involved in the program and got the early warning? I mean, there's no way to probably measure that. And it's almost too bad that, I mean,
Was there any?
Right.
I don't think there's any.
So,
Well, no, the Mass Department of Public Health does they have a calculation called a minimum infection rate, and there is a formula that they can determine an approximate number of human cases would be associated with that MIR, and that's what triggers the aerial spraying in many instances. And each time they've done this, and I haven't seen the calculations for this most recent event, but each time they've done that, they have seen a dramatic difference in the actual human cases versus what could have been theoretically possible. Now, I agree, every single human case is an absolute tragedy. We do our best to try to prevent every single case, but again, we just cannot do that. And, you know, how many could have been saved or have been saved by our program, again, it's an unknown that I wouldn't even venture to guess.
Well, you look at, you know, Northborough, who's been a member since the beginning, had a human case, but we haven't been a member of the program and had none. So it's like a very hard decision to make in terms of, do we spend the money? We haven't had an issue other than the fact that we've had Triple E in town, but yet towns that are part of the program have had human cases. So it's,
Again, I suppose we can bring it to the people. I don't see how any one of us can sit up here. I'm just not convinced, is all I'm saying.
It would be different, I think, if we were in a, I'm gonna say this every meeting until we actually get free cash certified, and then we're in a different budget situation. It would be totally different if we were in a different financial situation that maybe some of these other towns are in. But
Yes.
$50,000, it's swinging any direction right this moment, makes me pretty nervous, but
I don't think
at
the
the cost
budget
of
plays
lives,
any-
that's a tough,
I
that's, you
don't
know.
think the budget plays a role into this with, well, at least with my thinking, I just don't I'm just having a hard time saying that, yes, this is going to protect us from Triple E. I don't think it does. And that's just my opinion. Now, I can't scientifically sit here and tell you. All I can say is every point that I try to bring up, there's just, you brought up the point of, sorry, what you had just mentioned it about Northborough, I think with the early, I'm sorry, I'm not even trying to remember what I was gonna say, but maybe it'll come back to me. I don't see, every time this is looped back around, the Triple E's looped back around, and it's gotten to the critical status or the high alert status or whatever it's been, everybody's still involved in the same respect, whether it be Department of Public Health that's calling the shots, or using their formula that people might get this. I'm just not seeing that spending $53,000 a year, that I feel like we should know to get rid of old tires. I feel like we should know this, and we can educate our townspeople on this
You would think.
alone, right? I understand, sometimes common sense doesn't always come into play, but I feel like that we can educate our townspeople on that for much less cost. I feel like that if we need to spray because if there's a scare in the area or somebody does contract it, again, I'm just gonna go back to, you guys saw the elevated levels, the person still got it, then you sprayed. So it was constantly a reactive process. There was never, as proactive as you were, you still had to be reactive. So for all the money that Northborough has spent since 1939 to now, and we needed to spray because we were in a high alert, I think that we could come up with that amount of money to spray the whole town the one time that you guys did. I just don't, I'm having a hard time with it, that's all, sorry.
Okay. For questions, at this point, I think we should go to, if there's any more questions. Dan?
I have a couple of questions. So the first question, you had mentioned beaver control. I'm curious, would that potentially be in lieu of money that the town has budgeted? I think there was money budgeted in Concom's budget for beavers. I know Concom
This is more, yeah, this is more of beaver control when there's like a beaver pond that is producing a lot of mosquitoes, right? That's where you're looking at. You're not taking care of beaver problems that the town may have that aren't really related to.
It does depend. I mean, we do need to tie a mosquito component in there. There doesn't necessarily have to be an active mosquito situation at the time, but if we feel in our professional judgment it could potentially turn into one, then it would be something we would probably get involved in.
Do you do beaver trapping?
We do have a trapper on contract. We have not done any to this point, but there is a contract in place, and several of us are also licensed, but again, we haven't done it yet.
So you're using the flow control devices in all instances?
Yes.
Dan, you have another?
And so my other question, more from a parks standpoint, it sounds to me one of the huge benefits of this program is testing. I know it kind of seems like, you know, in August there, we were in a situation where towns around us were having positive results, and Mendon just had no results because we don't have any testing. And we did end up going critical several days before Mendon Fest, but we were basically a day away from holding a huge event, basically going into the blind with no knowledge that we even had potential triple E a month prior to Mendon. So it seems to me that would be a huge benefit, it's just the testing alone.
Is there a way to buy into the program at a lesser degree?
No, unfortunately, it's an all or nothing, because that's the way the assessments are set up.
How does the, how does the testing work? Like, how often, to Dan's question, how often do you come out, how often do you get tested, how much testing is there?
We have staff in all of our communities each week, and then we pull samples in on a weekly basis, and then testing is done weekly as well. A town the size of Mendon, I would estimate anywhere from at least 10 to 12 different trap sites, which would be done on a rotational basis. Could be more, could be less, depends upon topography and, you know, prior data that we have collected, but.
I could be mistaken, but I think that, if I remember correctly, that the reason we were notified by the state is because the towns around us that were in this program and were notified by the state that they found that there was substantial triple E, they was suspect of Mendon, the state, and that's when, like Tim said, they had the people available to come into Mendon and find it. With his program, they would already be here, and we would know sooner.
Oh, see, I had thought it was the horse that alerted them, but.
No, it was the horse that set us to critical status.
Right.
We were in talks about a week and a half before, that's how this started, because we were getting calls from residents when other communities started getting put on the list because their test came back positive. And we didn't have testing because we're not part of the program. And then about 10 days after that is when we got our positive result.
Yeah, we started seeing indications in the town of Westboro, and then there was a human case in the town of Grafton, which is not part of the program. So Mass Department of Public Health, they see the gaps that we have around us, so they did put traps in Grafton, Upton, and Mendon, and did subsequently find Tripoli in all those three communities. And then, of course, with the horse, horse being a mammal like us, susceptible to Tripoli, it pushed the level up even higher.
So we were sort of fortunate that we became the benefactor of what was going on around us, even though we didn't get the alert as quickly as if we were.
Okay, so
There's some benefit.
on that note, if we see all the towns around us that are testing positive, we can just assume we're positive.
But then what do we do if we're not a member? How do we go
Well, I mean, to the point of having to cancel an event or something like that, then we can, okay, so let me also ask this question. Are there private companies that will do testing, that maybe don't cost $53,000 a year? I'm just,
No.
There's no commercial testing.
Not that Mass Department of Public Health will accept. They have very specific protocols that are in place.
I have to say, Lonnie, I was sort of thinking along your line. We do have a company that we hire to test the beach.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if they do the same type of testing, and even if at this time, we can't sign up, we definitely need to be thinking in this direction. And, they have a lot of good resources, so whether or not we can tap into those today, if we can't, we still need to be thinking in that direction. We need to all be a little bit smarter, and maybe someday we could get to the point where we could be a member. We're not saying that we have to do this today at this meeting, but we definitely need to be thinking in this direction. We can't be just hoping that we're going to be the benefactor of the towns around us that are involved in a program like this forever.
At least let it go to town meeting and let the people decide.
We have a question?
I did. I was wondering, so if the testing shows that there's a infected mosquito in town, what happens next? Does that trigger some sort of alert system so residents know to take precautions? And I'm wondering about that horse too, if there had been something in place, whether the owners of the horse and other people would have been able to take some precautions that might have prevented that horse from becoming infected.
When, in our member communities, Mass Department of Public Health will always alert the local officials first, Board of Health. Once they are notified, they then call us and let us know that one of our traps went positive. What then happens is we start a conversation with our Board of Health. Now, the actual response will depend upon a lot of factors, time of year, species involved, virus involved, what the weather is, etc. In many instances this year, as you may imagine, spraying was one of the recommendations that we made. We then coordinate with the local Board of Health. We generate maps. In many instances, the Board of Health will make changes to those maps, add areas, take out areas, etc. We also, through our social media outlets, put out the word that these communities have been experiencing these virus positives, and then additional larval control is often one of the responses, especially in West Nile virus. Those species tend to develop in storm drains, so we always check to make sure the storm drains have been treated. But any positive mosquito sample we receive, there's always going to be a response and a coordination with our local officials to determine what's the best avenue.
As far as the horse, it's my understanding that there are vaccines for horses that protect against Triple E. Alan has a horse, he can maybe elaborate on that. It's very inexpensive from what I'm told.
Yeah, my vet comes out every spring and does my horses, so they'll get Triple E, West Nile, tetanus. My horses no longer show, so there's a couple of vaccines that they don't have to get. And I believe if the horse that did pass away from Triple E, if the horse had been vaccinated, the horse wouldn't have seen that end. I know with conversations with the agricultural committee, I know that they're going to start working on becoming more active and trying to help people that maybe don't know or can't afford the vaccines, try to help them get it so that their animals are protected.
Great. Well, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to move on to other topics.
Thank you.
Thank you very
for the
much.
So much.
information.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Review STM warrant. Quickly. Oh, God. No, that was the budget, isn't it? No, it was the budget. That was budget. That was May. March, right.
Okay. Here we are.
It shouldn't take too long.
It should not take too long. Many of these articles, we discussed at length last time. I'll just give a general overview of talking about the status of where we are with free cash first.
Sure.
Most of these articles would be, need to have a funding source, and obviously FinCom can't make a recommendation on a funding source until we have funding sources available. And so their meeting has been pushed closer to the STM as we anticipate free cash will be certified by then, and then we will have a funding source. If not, we will skip over all of these items on the floor, and we will review them again next town meeting, whenever that may be, March or May. Okay. Bills of a prior year, we talked about last
Yep.
time, it's trash bill. Stabilization if we have any funding, CapEx if we have any funding, OPEB if we have any funding, the mosquito control program.
I mean, I'm not in favor of it, but
Neither am I.
Okay, well, it's ultimately, it's up to the two of you to decide if you want to leave it on. Just as an aside, since Dan is sitting here, I was thinking, there is some value in education programs. Maybe it won't cost us $50,000, but maybe we could think about something that we could do education-wise, just creatively, in-house.
I would, oh, sorry.
no,
I would like to know what other opportunities are out there for
Yeah.
us on the full level for an à la carte type of service or just other options. That I feel that.
I think
Yeah,
also,
I can't,
yeah.
just looking at what you would have spent from 1939 to now, and, you know,
I think it was 1972, but
But even still.
it's a lot.
I think the state is also, given what has happened this year, they're going to be a lot more proactive in being involved in this area and around the state. I mean, they know that, you know, it was a crisis really this year, so.
and I wish I would ask this while we were here. Maybe I'll bring it up again for the next time. I feel like this has come in a few cycles over time, and then it disappears off our radar for 10 years, and then.
Right.
When was the last time?
10 years ago.
Yes, yeah, 10 years ago was the last time sorry.
That was at a meeting he was at before. He said it's a 7-year cycle.
We jump in and out?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Just mark.
Every
the
7
calendar.
years we,
Terrible, I know.
all right, well, I just don't,
Okay, so.
I get the idea of putting it on for the town meeting to decide, but also, I
think it's risky considering the financial year that we're in. I'm just saying that again for the 10th time.
And also, I think that so I would assume that, look, also, we're coming into the winter months, right? And this might be a better spring article that, or annual town meeting article, that it's in our next budget cycle for next year, something along those lines, or a special article even for the next year's budget cycle, and we can see what we have money-wise then. But that's a lot of money.
Okay,
so are we agreeing not to have it on?
okay.
Yeah.
Article 6 is the buyout of the accumulated time for the fire department. And again, I would say that's totally contingent, up for debate, depending on funding source and availability, since it's
Right.
not a pressing issue, but it should be looked at in the future. So leave it for now and then pass it if we have to later.
Yep.
With the settlement,
Yep.
we have pending. JAG program,
I think it's a great program.
since this wasn't on there last time.
That's
Probably
correct.
should say a few things.
Mark's familiar with it. Lonnie, it's a program that, with Amy County in Milford, she runs a substance abuse and counseling program, and most of the community towns are already into it. What we have to do is, it's $1 per resident. We set up a special account, this JAG account, and it doesn't go anywhere, it just stays in the town of Mendon. So you'll have like $300 sitting somewhere in case we ever need to dig into it, but that's, helps the program get larger grants. This year, they got $1.something million to help out with substance abuse, so it's pretty much to deal with the opioid epidemic. And what it does is, it gets counseling, it sets up a program where you get notified if someone overdoses in another town, so now you send an officer and a counselor to the family, see if they want to go into some type of rehab, and it's constant, offering. It's kind of a prevention and treatment program that we have, and This is a good program at the end of Milford, and Mark and I talked the other day, Worcester County and the DA is setting something up called SIMS, and this will work with it too. But it'll be all of Worcester County along with JAG, so we'll know if someone ODs in Worcester and Mendon, and we can try to get them services here in Mendon, versus they drop off the radar and we don't know, and then someone in Mendon, and we go, the first time we find out is there's an overdose there and they don't make it or something, where we could have prevented it, it's across the state, it's a good program to, work with the opiate epidemic instead of locking people up, try to get treatment, it's a disease, so.
It's a great network of people involved too.
Yep. And again, the money doesn't, right now, JAG hasn't used any of the money. It's just the way the federal grant works. You need to have some account set up in case they ever need to dig into it. So for the past 7 or 8 years, they haven't touched any. They just keep getting more money. Now with this latest grant, it's $1 million something.
Okay.
The next grant after that, they can get even more with our participation in it, so. What we get out of it is a lot more than what we put into it. And again, we don't even put anything into it. It's just an amount in a special account that's gonna sit somewhere,
Right.
so.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Article 9, firefighter turnout gear. Article 10.
Sorry,
but-
kind of off topic, but did you get an email from the fire marshal's office about that grant?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we're on it now.
got it.
Thank you.
Figured you were. Just thought I'd throw it out.
Do you want to talk about cisterns again, just because it's one of the detailed articles, yes? Just people, we had some audio problems at the last meeting, so if anyone is actually watching, I'm curious.
Yeah, so, obviously, because we don't have water in most of the town of Mendon, we have, fire cisterns or underground tanks that are put into subdivisions for, water, for fire protection, for water. And, it had been on my list to look at since I started here. One of my concerns is that there are so many cisterns, we don't have the ability to, properly maintain them moving forward, as well as some of them really weren't installed properly, and we do need to make modifications to them. So I was able to make the cistern provisions a little more, I don't want to say user-friendly, but more applicable. For example, Pond Street has 3 cisterns on there for 16 houses, which is just kind of incredible. So we reworked the regulation, so it'll be less cisterns, but we require the developer to put a $5,000 maintenance fee for future maintenance on all cisterns. In order to have that money stay there and use it when needed, we'll need a revolving account for that.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
11 sets the limit of the revolving account. Article 12 is the CPA buckets.
Yep.
Article 13,
Historic purchase of archival sleeves.
I think this one was $500. I can't-
Yeah, it was fine.
That wasn't much, yeah. That's-
They asked for 3 and they said, then we said 5.
Okay. 14 is a cost for an easement and acquisition for a well that's on our Paddock property next to the senior center for the affordable housing that's being developed over there potentially.
How much is it?
We won't know, but it will be paid for from CPA, affordable housing.
Okay.
15 is the actual authorization to accept an easement by you. 16, same thing, there's 2 easements over there. One of them is a electricity easement. 17, same, one is cost, one is you guys actually accepting it. 18, Historic wanted $300 for costs of mailing the mailings related to the demo hearings.
Yep.
19, this is from the planning board, this is the LID, they had a public hearing last week.
Yep.
20 is to amend the table of use for marijuana into all general business. 21 is pilot agreement.
All general business?
I believe that's the change.
Yes, that was what they that's what they discussed at the hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
21 is a solar pilot agreement for 35 Cape Road. It's authorization for you to negotiate a solar pilot. That's what it is, not the actual,
To see if the town will let us do the.
we'll let you negotiate the pilot.
For the pilot. Yep, I
Yes, it has
understand.
to go to town meeting. 22 is from the town clerk. You remember she was here, she had a couple of articles. This one is to treat Saturdays as a holiday, so if there is a deadline, she can move it to a Friday. 23 is to allow you to set fees. 24 is the change she wanted to make in regards to, this is the dog fee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Scenic roads.
25 is a scenic road. Oh, no. Oh.
Yep.
26 is
Traveling animals.
traveling animals.
So have we, do you want to come up? I don't know.
Reviewed the bylaw as
Okay.
written, no potential issues that we saw from a legal perspective. Yes.
In regards to the zoo.
No, my question is just, it's a general versus a zoning, that's all.
Right.
Well, it's traveling, so we didn't think that it applied to the zoo.
Okay. Well,
Can you exempt the zoo somehow in it?
Well, this says to prohibit the display of wild, exotic, and traveling animal acts. Does the zoo have traveling animal acts?
Well, I just would hate for there to be interpretation that the bird show is a, although it's not traveling.
Well, birds aren't one of the categories listed in the current thing. I mean, I wouldn't mind if you mentioned Southwick as an exemption, you know, that would...
Or just zoos in general.
That's something that can go,
Well, I don't know about zoos in general, but hopefully there's only going to be one zoo in town.
Well, but there, if there's potentially a second, wouldn't want them also to be, if the spirit of this is to stop the traveling,
Yes.
then we shouldn't have anything permanent be anywhere touchable by this. If that is the spirit of what we're trying to do.
It is. Although I know that some zoos sometimes bring in traveling acts on occasion. Like,
so
you know,
the zoo has, their camel rides are a vendor that provides them through their season. So is that considered a traveling outfit?
I don't know. Where
No.
where are they coming from?
I have no idea exactly,
I
but
don't think that,
I mean, I know I mean, if it was up to me, I would say, you know, no, but I want to get this, some form of this looked at and voted on. So if we need to exempt zoos, then to make you guys.
or as long as you're, we're convinced that it's specific, but again, that becomes an issue where is the camel rides because it's not an animal owned by the zoo.
to me, it's got to be a wild or exotic animal in a traveling animal act. If these camels, is that what we're talking about? Live someplace off-site at a vendor who's got a
Camel farm.
camel farm, and and they live there, and they come to the zoo for the season that the zoo is open, I don't think that counts as a traveling animal act. You can further define traveling animal act if you want to. You can have an amendment on, to it. But to me, a traveling animal act is the animals go with a particular outfit and go from city A to city B to city C.
could you further define traveling animal act as something that says the animals are only located in Mendon less than a week or something to that effect?
I don't see why you can't change this article to have it, it's your article. and it's not been posted
Right.
yet. So if you want to change language, you can change language. It could also, if you decide not to do it, someone could decide to try to do it from town meeting floor as well. You can try to define traveling animal act, or you can try to say, do it in the negative, traveling animal act does not include.
Yeah, right. But we can't do it specific to a location. Right.
I would think you would need to be
Right.
brought.
Yes, if there's more than one, like, if there's more than one venue in town that has camel rides on a regular basis, and the camels aren't in a traveling show, like, say the movie theater, for example, just saying there was a movie theater, and from March till December, they had camel rides, and the camels either lived on site or lived at their farm.
Right.
That would probably be okay if it, as a non-traveling, but if the animals came in 1 week from somebody, went to another
Right.
town for another week, and then came back, I think that would be a traveling act and would be prohibited.
Okay.
So it's really a question of what your scope of what you want to do is, because this is a warrant article you're proposing or supporting, and I'm assuming you're the proponent, and it hasn't gone to print yet. I think you can change the language now. I think once it goes to print, I think that it's quite possible an amendment on the floor at town meeting could be viewed within the scope because you're further clarifying, but it could also
When are we
be
going to
challenged. I mean,
Soon.
I can't tell you for certain which way it would go.
We just need to find a word that makes it clear what traveling is.
I think it's about, I think it's about clearly defining what traveling,
Right, so we just have to elaborate on what this is. So that's, we could put
We just
whatever we
figure it
want in
out
there.
Before we go to print?
Right, so,
Mark, when Southwick brings in the camels, do they live there on the
They do,
top?
yeah.
They do, until the season ends or
Mhm.
whatever. That seems fine,
right,
yeah. I'm concerned with the constant travel, confinement.
Right.
From town to town, state to state.
Is
Exactly.
there a definition you've encountered that you'd be comfortable proposing?
I'd have to look into it. I don't have the wording or anything now, but I think we're all sort of understanding
Right.
what we're talking about.
can you do like temporary traveling animal acts for a period of less than 2 weeks?
5 days
Yeah,
or-
right, something like that, because if it's a seasonal, you know what I mean, you're talking about, right,
I think you can pick almost any definition you want because it's your article.
right. I would put in some length of time that,
and I think it should be a
that,
short length of time.
right, so it's like 3 days, because we, in and out. And so a circus that's gonna set up is, wanna set up for more than 3 days, correct? Or do they set up over a weekend, typically?
They said,
Hold on, do
well,
we
they're
wanna-
only there one day.
Wait, do we want it to be short or we want it to be a longer period of time?
We want to have it, we want to
If
say,
they're here less than a week, then that means
They're traveling.
Yes.
that's a traveling.
Right.
Anything else that's here for a week, or do you want it to be 2 weeks? They'd have to actually be set up here, the animals roaming the fields. If the circus was here for 2 weeks, that's a, I mean, again,
To me,
it's
that's
still
traveling.
traveling. I'm just saying you want it, we would want a longer period of time for it to be a more, if you say 2 days,
You want it short to be traveling, I believe.
Right.
So if someone's going to be here for 2 days.
oh, I'm sorry, I see what you're saying.
Right.
I'm thinking of it from a different angle.
Right.
I'm going the other way.
Right, I think it's gotta be very clear that if the animals are only in town for, actually, I think it's from less than,
right, that's what put less than a week. Wild or exotic animals, traveling animal acts, you know, for less than a week. For
Right.
public entertainment. And
Because
then-
no
Unless
one's
you want
gonna
it
do
longer,
that.
Do you want it, if they're not, if
For
they're-
less than 2 weeks,
or less
because
than
then
2
you're,
months?
Well, then it just helps, if we already commonly agree that it doesn't apply to the zoo and we're trying to protect their interest.
Right.
And then if we're making this more specific so that if it comes up what the debate about traveling is, we can say, well, it's less than a week. It makes it more specific to the potential other person, not the zoo, which is really what we need. So I think that would do it. I mean,
What if you get someone who's coming in for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and they're traveling?
well, we could,
Well, then
they're still traveling anyway, right? So,
But no, but now we've
but
defined
we've
it.
defined it. But the likely, I feel, would you agree, the likelihood that an act is coming in and they're gonna stay for 2 weeks, I mean, that's probably very unlikely.
Right, hopefully, yeah. So, can we just leave it as is, and if something comes up?
Well, that's true. I mean, who was likely to challenge this?
And I mean, you know what, at the end of the day, if you're comfortable with it, I mean,
I mean,
I mean, if it's a traveling zoo, if there's somebody that, you know, comes in and sets up here 1 week, or 1 month, if they go from place to place with their animals, they're clearly traveling.
right.
But if the animals are coming to one spot on a seasonal basis, and then, you know,
There's a
they
living
have their
there.
home,
yeah, they're
that's
making,
not traveling, that's just seasonal use, and they're just not housed on the site.
Remind me of the animals that were included in this.
Do you want me to read them all?
Yeah, just, there's only,
It says wild or exotic.
yeah, but here's specific
list, too.
language.
Miss giraffe, camels, excepting but cattle, bison, buffalo, swine, sheep, goats, llamas, alpacas, crocodiles, alligators, elephants, tigers, lions, jaguars, leopards, cheetahs, cougars, any hybrid thereof, kangaroos, apes, monkeys, lemurs, rhinoceros, tapirs, zebras, seals, sea lions, walruses, bears, nurse sharks, lemon sharks.
So those
Those
wouldn't be
would
allowed.
included as banned from.
Okay,
a lot of the zoo.
right.
But
But-
they're not
but-
traveling.
I don't,
But what about, I'm just throwing this out because I think it's important that we do this right without causing a problem for the zoo. Do they have an educational program where they do travel with some of those
I was
animals?
thinking of that too.
oh, true.
Now, does someone say, oh, well, that's
But
amusement?
that's not a traveling,
You mean the zoo
Mobile,
brings some of its
Mhm.
animals to
Right.
other areas?
like to the schools or,
Yeah, that wouldn't be
Okay, just
included.
wanted to voice that.
Okay, so, but I have my
Alright.
next question is, what
well,
is
it says
the,
for public, I'm sorry, for
Yeah.
public entertainment or amusement.
right, so that's not education, but let's just say, who is going to challenge this?
hold on, there's a good point, this, because you can get the zoo mobile to go to a birthday party, correct?
Anything you want.
So,
It's educational, you know,
it
it's
is
all about
educational, but that's not
education.
an educational, I mean, I
But when
don't,
you go to the, when you take the traveling zoo to a birthday party, you bring in wild and exotic animals?
yeah.
Mhm.
What on the list would go to a birthday party?
Alligator,
Kangaroo,
What?
kangaroos, they
alligator,
have sometimes a baby kangaroo.
Baby
snakes.
things.
I bet the birds.
Okay, but that's just for, like, within a town or,
Right,
you
so
know,
we gotta
community
be-
radius, and then going back to the zoo.
Yeah, it's a one,
We can't
usually
write
one
in,
day.
none of this
They're
shall
not
apply
really
to
traveling.
any
That's what I was gonna say.
permanent zoos or,
I'm sorry, the animals, they live in the zoo and they're just going out for, you know.
Like a
for-
visit somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then they return to the zoo.
You could
which is
say
their home.
excluding animals permanently housed
yes, that's what,
and, you know, being,
That's a different.
you know, used
right,
for
I think,
temporary,
I think we have
for
to find
less
a way
than
to
24 hours.
exclude the zoo.
Leaving their abode for less than 24 hours.
Like, this shall not apply
just make the adjustment.
to any
Permanently
animal,
housed
any
animal.
permanently, and then we have to say, for this, our definition, permanently housed means, because if they're coming in for the season,
Right.
any animals coming in for less than a season,
Dan?
Permanently housed in Mendon.
what the
Are
camels
the
aren't.
camels from Mendon?
No.
I think the argument being that you're trying to prohibit third-party traveling acts coming to town. If someone's in town 24/7, chances are that if there's a problem, it's already being addressed by current, I don't know.
Don't the animals in Mendon go away for the winter, a lot of them now?
No.
Not that do that anymore.
I think
A lot of
the
them
zoo
do.
owns them.
I just
Right.
go back to the fact of, So let's say somebody challenges this bylaw, who's gonna challenge it? One, and if they do, who are they coming to challenge it?
Hold
Us?
on.
They're gonna sue us for discrimination because we didn't let their Camel Act come to town, but we let the zoos? I just find it very hard to believe.
And it may be true, right? But I think we know what we're trying to accomplish. Could we just make sure that it's legal-like and
We can try, but you have to approve it. It's your article, so we have to wordsmith it.
But we
Right.
don't have to wordsmith it tonight.
We have
To
to,
death.
well,
Do we?
soon, yes.
When?
Soon,
when is the
I
final
know.
language?
is with council's recommendation.
Right,
on
so
I will
if...
figure
so-
something out and you can present
Then we just need, well, this is it for presenting, because our next meeting is not until the middle of November. So this is it. So I'm just wondering, if we know what the intent is, that we want to exclude it from the zoo or any, that's the goal.
Function of the
and
zoo.
Without, just saying, without putting Southwick Zoo in it, that's the goal. Whatever language we can put in to do that thing, and that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Have you worked with other town bylaws and what they have said?
This came from the Humane Society, this bylaw that I've been working with. So this is a sample of.
How have they dealt with zoos, any idea?
Honestly, I don't know. Most towns don't have a zoo. I don't think any of the towns currently
Yeah.
that have this type of bylaw in Massachusetts
Right.
have zoos.
Right.
Right.
There's only one other town, right? Or, well, I like the.
There's a few,
Davis
actually.
Farmland's considered zoos and
Yeah,
things like
they
that?
have permanent.
Lupa Zoo, Forest Park out west.
Okay, well, we'll
But have
figure
you
it-
seen
we'll figure that out.
that bylaw sample?
Yeah, it was in the the full warrant when we sent it over.
Okay. All
When
right.
is the town meeting that we're talking
November
about?
20th.
Okay, I didn't see that listed anywhere.
Yeah.
November 20th.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll figure that out,
Thank you.
but it'll be on the warrant.
But just for clarification, what actually would be the recourse of a person? What would it be? It's a general bylaw, so what is the risk, right? So it passes as is, just the language as is. So it would then be subjected to a challenge by someone who, a potentially traveling act that comes to town, and then they'd say,
they're a traveling act,
Southwick
and they
has camel rides, why can't we? And
Because
then
you're not
and then-
staying here for the season with your animals.
Right, but then we say, our interpretation of the word traveling is you're temporary coming through town, and then what, they take us to court? I mean, like, what is the act, I mean, if you're just thinking about it logically, like, what is,
Yeah, who's gonna spend?
right, I just don't see much of a challenge. Well, I would be more concerned about the zoning, because I feel like it would be spot zoning then if we prohibited at the zoo, so.
I'm just thinking no traveling animal acts allowed anywhere.
Right, except that there are mobile, like, an education program.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We'll figure some language out for you.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Even if like excluding educational and temporary,
Perfect.
we'll figure something.
Okay.
okay. Article 27 is citizens petition for audio-visual recording of the following boards. Cindy and I have discussed all of these articles. This particular one, as written, currently doesn't have an enforcing authority and therefore cannot be a bylaw.
Okay.
So as it's written right now, it cannot be enacted. It could
Okay.
be passed but would have no effect, or
Advisory.
it'd be advisory, or could potentially be amended on the floor. We were just talking about actually how much authority we even have to amend a citizen's petition on the floor, which probably isn't a lot. That will really be up for debate
Okay.
when we get there. Article 28 and 29, there's only really one issue with both of these articles, which is what if one passes and the other one doesn't? So we would try to amend this on the floor if we had to, in order to make sure that it incorporated all Mendon documents if it were to change, so that we don't have some or none. And then Article 30 is changing the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5.
The alternative on Article 28 and 29, sorry,
Okay.
just to be clear, Kim's right in that the concept would be to have them all in one place so you don't have it in one or the other, but technically, you might need to put forward in the warrant a separate placeholder article that puts them both together.
Right, if we're not allowed to amend on the floor.
I mean, you can amend on the floor, but the question is, where this said, first of all, if it says zoning, you need to have a hearing, so you couldn't put zoning in with the general, right? And-
Well, I would say, since it's too late now for article, I mean, if one passes and the other one doesn't, then can't we fix it in May?
In theory.
Yeah, we could,
But is 29, you just said that 29 needs a hearing. Because it's zoning,
It's zoning.
so it needs a hearing?
It's a zoning
Any
bylaw
language
change.
changes,
You need a
yeah.
zoning hearing by the planning board. You need a planning board hearing about the zoning bylaw amendment.
what happens if it doesn't pass? What if the
Don't you
planning
do the
board?
hearing before the,
Well, we can't control, I mean, the planning board didn't put it forward, so,
But the planning
But
board
would have
has-
to have a
Have
hearing.
to have a hearing.
right.
oh,
post.
after it's
Right,
voted
because
on?
they wouldn't have had it
No,
before.
before town meeting.
They can't.
Why?
Well, I guess they could. I
When's
mean.
town
Don't they have
but-
to, actually have to be?
They have to, it's a citizen zoning
Yeah.
bylaw amendment.
Okay.
They better be made aware of that.
Well, I was thinking that if it passed, they then had it.
No, you have to,
don't think that, yeah, right.
Right, because what if it's a no with the planning board? Yeah. Okay.
well, that's what happened with the marijuana bylaw change. When it came through citizens petition, they had to have the hearing.
Okay.
And they have to have the hearing before town meeting, and they have to make a report before the article is acted on it.
Same thing as last time.
Okay, then we will work on that. And that is that for the warrant.
Great.
that
Take a
it?
motion, yeah.
Any executive session?
Not tonight.
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
No, we gotta move to sign the warrant.
Oh, sorry.
We're almost done.
With-
Move to sign the November 20th, 2019 special town meeting warrant.
As amended by town council,
So moved.
yeah.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Okay, I will, is there anything else? Dan?
Just a question, I noticed on the draft, there were a bunch of things that reference items to be available on the website. Whenever that gets posted, if somebody could send them to me or Ellen, so we make sure that's all up.
Okay,
A
yeah.
lot of times stuff says that, and somebody on Facebook's looking for it, and nothing's there.
That's a problem. That's a good point to make sure.
Yes.
Sorry, say that again? I'm missing.
Some of the stuff says, copy of bylaws available on the town's website.
Right.
Honestly, the best thing to do is to put it on one big PDF, here's the warrant, here's all the bylaws. Like, I guess I'm saying, send me the stuff so I can post it.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I understand. Thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.